Hello, welcome to Classical Greek Latin. My name is Josh. I am the teacher for this course. This is the Greek course. This is lesson 4. It is chapter 2 in your Crosby Schaeffer book on page 4. This lesson should be pretty short and painless. We are going to review the persistent accent, which pertains to nouns, and we will get into the recessive the recessive accent next lesson, next chapter when we start talking about verbs. So let's go ahead and start this chapter, and just for fun, we'll look at this sample sentence that we have here, and I'll read it to you in Greek. So, ponos gar hos legusin eu kleas pater. Okay, so we have here ponos, so toil, they say, is the father of fame. So you have ponos, it is in nominative singular masculine, so it is the subject, right? God you can translate as for. Hos is thus or thusly. So they're combining these two to say, it's an expression in English, so they say, right? Legusin is to say, and then we have not covered this yet, but it is third person plural, so they, and it is in the present tense, and that's how they have here. So toil, for toil, thus they say. Okay. Now they don't actually have the word is in this, in the English, or excuse me, in the Greek here. It's implied. And you have pater is nominative form also. Now I don't expect you to know this. I'm just walking you through the Greek here as far as I know it. So you have ponos, nominative form, singular masculine. Pater, nominative form, singular masculine, right? So these are being connected, right? And they're being connected with the verb saying, okay? So we have, for toil, they say, thusly they say, okay, to be the father is the father of, and then they have fame here in the genitive, right? So the father of the fame, okay? All right, with that, okay, so that's just for fun. Let's go ahead and read through this first chapter here, or this first paragraph. The accent of the nominative must be learned by observation. All that means is when you see the nominative form in the dictionary, it will have the accent, and you just memorize the accent with the spelling of the word. That's all they mean. The accent of the nominative must be learned by observation. That is, you just memorize it as the vocabulary comes to you. Okay? It will remain on the same syllable in the other cases if possible. What do they mean, if possible? Okay. It will, if possible, means that if we don't violate the three more rule or three syllable rule, right? So that happens when we change from a short ending here, os with an omicron, to long. So we go from a single more to a double more, okay? And that's what they mean, if possible, right? So here it's remaining on the iota, because that's how it is in the dictionary. This is the nominative form, right? Subject form, nominative form. And then it's going to stay there because even though we add a long vowel from os to u, you still are within the three more rule. So you have two mores here under u, and then one more here under the short iota. So you have three, and then here you only have two mores, one for the short omicron and then one for the iota, right? But that's, so the accent's just going to stay there. It doesn't have to move because it's not violating going outside the bounds of three more or three syllables. So that's what they mean. It will remain on the same syllable in the other cases if possible. And that is in the cases with long endings. So the genitive, the dative here, genitive plural, dative plural here. Okay? And then also this is also long here. And then remember, omicron iota is treated as short at the end of a word. Okay? So if possible, that is when the ending of the word, the inflection, goes from short to long. Okay? as long as we're not violating the three more rule or three syllable rule. The accent likes to stay within three more. All right, going on. And acute on the penult, that is before the last or second to last. So the penult, there's the last, and then there's the before the last. Of a noun of the O declension remains on that syllable throughout. Okay, and that is a coincidence of that just so happens not to violate the three more rule. Being on the second to last syllable never violates the three more rule, even when we change the ending from short to long. Okay, so you see the accent stays there all the way through. And it's not regardless of the ending, it's because, and being only on the penult, it stays within the three mores even when the end is lengthened. Okay, so remains on the syllable throughout. And okay, here we have, now we're going to a three-syllable word, or a word with the accent on the antepenult before the second to last syllable, third from last syllable. And acute on the antepenult is drawn to the penult when the ultima is long. That is to say, when you go from a single more on, let's use this word here, dikaios, right? Which means just, right? The just man. So when we have an accent, okay, on the nominative form in the antepenult, and how do we know that? Well, it's written here for us, but if we were to look this up in the dictionary would tell us that's where the accent is. Okay, so an acute on the antepenult is drawn to the penult when the ultima is long. And why is that? Because here you have a single more, okay, and then you have the two more here for a long alpha iota, and then you have the accent there, right? So we're fudging a little in the middle like we did with anthropos, right? But the concept is the same. However, when you go from that short omicron here from the nominative to the genitive, when the ultima is long, the antepenult is drawn to the penult, okay? That is to say, it moves towards to close the gap so that we don't have excessive mores here, because if it were to remain here, we would have, if that accent were to remain on the antepenult with the omicron upsilon here long, we would have two mores here, one, two mores here, 3, 4, and then a fifth more. That's just, for the Greek here, is completely unreasonable. So we got to close that in and accent that penult, so that we're closer and within the bounds of that three more rule. So 2 here and then 2 here, and we're just saying we're going to put the accent on that second half of that I, right? And so you see long here, the accent moves to close in to stay within those three mores. And then here we have an omicron short, so it can go back to its original position, right? Okay. And then you have it's within three syllables, even though that middle one is long. Okay. So again, the more rule of thumb, it is a rule of thumb, but it really does help explain the why as to why these accents move or stay where they're at. Okay. All right. So when the ultima is long, final omicron iota of the nominative plural is considered short. There you go. Okay. It's always considered short, except in the optative form, which is a verbal form, which we will get to much later, but it's always short at the end of a word. Okay. And also at the end of oikoi, it's considered long. But omicron iota at the end, just think short. Okay. And you see that here. The omicron iota on the dikaioi is treated as short in the same manner that dikaios with the omicron short o is treated as short there. Okay. So go through these here and read them to yourself with the definite article. So ho philos, tu philou, and think about the length of that ending, that inflection, how it's going from, think about the ending on that inflection, how it's going from short to long, and how that affects the accent. Okay, so again, here in philos, this is a good example. We have a two-syllable word. The accent is already on the first or the second to last syllable. Okay, but as we add the ending, change it from short to long, we're still within the three more rule. So it can stay there. All right. With dikaios, just an adjective. Adjectives and nouns are treated the same way as with accents. They're persistent. You have the accent here on the antepenult, but when it shifts to the oo long, it's going to move forward to close that gap. Okay. So yeah, read through all these. Think through the logic as to why that accent is either staying still, that is it persisting where it's at, hence the persistent accent, or it's shifting to please the three more rule, the sense of rhythm at the end of a word in Greek. All right, so they want us to decline or inflect, that is, bend the ending of polemos, okay, which means war. So they want us to inflect that and or decline it. So let's do that real quick. Let me grab my other pen, piece of paper here, and we'll do that together. Now, as I write this out, try to anticipate how I'm going to change it, or the accents. So the endings on this declension, the inflections on the end, you should have them memorized by now. They may be a little hazy, but you should be well on your way to knowing them by heart, so you don't have to struggle to remember them. But let's just start here. Let me write out these words here. Nominative, okay, let me get this into focus for you. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then you have genitive, dative, accusative. Right, now I always abbreviate these as just nom, gen, dat, and ACC, okay? But I want you to see those spelled out there. And again, for review, nominative is going to be your subject, genitive, source of something. In the last lesson, they talked about it being to mark possession. And then dative, it means to give the indirect object, to or for, and accusative is going to be your direct object. All right, so they want us to inflect polemos. All right, we'll do this with the definite article also. Okay, so the accent is on there's the ultima, there's the penult, and then the anteultima. So the accent starts out on the antepenult, and the only reason I know that is because the book has told me. And the book knows that because the lexicon told them. Okay, so we're just getting that from the lexicon basically, but that should be memorized with this word. Okay, so now let's go, so we'll decline this, or another way. Decline means, again, to descend in order of importance, from most important to least important, or to inflect means to bend the endings. So they're asking us to inflect this word, so this is what they mean. This is what they want us to do, okay? Now we're going to have the genitive here, to. Okay, so we're changing the ending from that omicron sigma to omicron upsilon. So we went from short to long. So that means we went from one more here to two mores here. So that accent is going to it's going to be drawn to the end to honor the three more rule. And now we have two mores here for the long and then a more for the short. And so we're within that rule. Okay. Now we have the dative. So omega with a subscript iota. And we're going to put a circumflex over that. And again, that's because we've memorized it. All right, and then you're going to, so pour les mots. Okay. Again, we started out, the accent started up here with the short, long, it shifted towards the long syllable at the end. Here we have another one that's long. Omega is always long, especially when it's subscripted with a iota. Irregular diphthong, it's long. Okay, so the accent is going to go there. Okay. If you remember when we were putting a circumflex over the end, we did that because in the dictionary entry, the acute accent was on the last syllable. Okay. So if you're thinking about that, that's why. Here the accent started on the antepenal, so it's going to want to persist there, and it will, unless it has to accommodate the three more rule and move towards a long syllable at the end or on the ultima. All right, and now we have tone. And note I put a grave on the tone because it's followed by a word. So we have pour les mots, direct object, accusative there. Okay, and now it's short, so we're free to go back to where it wants to be, because that's how it is in the dictionary, the lexicon. And it's still within the three more rule because we have a short here, the omicron short epsilon. Remember, epsilon is also always short. So we have one more, two more, three more. So we're honoring the three more rule. Okay. So let's do the plural. So this is singular. So we'll do the plural now. And again, this is a rough breathing, so it's hoi, like an H sound on the front. This was also a rough breathing, ho, like an H on the front. Okay. So we have hoi, polamoy. Okay. Now again, this is a diphthong, and you would think, okay, it's long, so it's going to move towards it. But remember, omicron iota is considered short, and also alpha iota is considered short. So the accent is going to persist where it originally was, as seen in the lexicon, in the dictionary. Okay. Okay, now we're going to do genitive. And again, so just to be clear, we have the nominative here. This whole line is nominative. It's just that this is singular and now this is plural. Okay, and then you have the genitive line. So this is genitive singular and this is going to be genitive plural. Just to be clear, the dative and then accusative. All right, so we have ton, polemon. Okay, and now again, does it stay or does it shift? So it's long, so it's going to shift because we have two more there and then one more here. So we want to keep it within the 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay. Now we have toys. Polemois. And again, this is long because it's not the end, right? The omicron iota is short here because it is the final, it's the final letters of the word. Here it's closed off by sigma, so it is treated as long again. Or not again, it's just treated as, it is long because it's not the end, because the sigma is there. Okay. And then we have tous, this is accusative plural, and again a grave because it's followed by another word. All right. So this is a long, again, so it's going to draw that accent in close to honor the three more rule. So it is long. Let's see here. I think my screen may have frozen. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that is hopolemos, inflected, or to say it another way, declined. All right. So let's take a look. That's basically the lesson for today. And let's take a look at the genitive here. And let's just read this together. So the genitive, a place from which. The genitive with many prepositions denotes place from which. And they give us the example of he sends the man from the river, right? So he's from the river. So it's not necessary to bog down with all these different technical titles for different uses of the genitive, because essentially the essence of genitive is it's the source from which something comes from, right? So if it is the book of the man, you could say, okay, that is he owns the book. He possesses the book, therefore he's in the genitive. Or you could just have the general understanding, the essential understanding that the book comes from the man, right? Now we know that the book does not come from the man in the same way that a son or a child comes from the man, right? The father of a son, for example, or the son of his father. But that's just common sense. So if you just remember that genitive is the source of generation of where something comes from, you don't have to memorize all these different technical titles for nuanced uses of this case, like genitive of possession, genitive from which. But that's what they're saying here, right? So let's look at this sentence here in Greek. So ton anthropon, I know that's accusative, so I know it's going to be the direct object. Pempe, so he sent, all right, apo, away from the genitive river, right? So he sent the man from the river. So again, so they're saying that's genitive from which. You don't have to call it genitive a place from which. You can see that's a river is a place. You don't have to say that. But if it helps you, you can use this terminology, place from which. All right, and then ek tu potamu, out of the river. And they're just, apo is from, ek is out of. Okay, pretty simple stuff, this lesson, which is nice after some of the longer lessons we've had lately. But here is your vocabulary for this week. And when you memorize this vocabulary, make sure you're memorizing the full dictionary entry. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit for you. So, anthropos, ou, so this is the nominative form. Again, that tells us where the accent is going to persist or try to persist. And then the ou is the genitive ending. So we know which declension or which inflection, set of inflections this word comes from. Because we haven't learned them yet, but there are two other sets of declensions or inflections, right? So this genitive tells you that anthropos is going to follow this set of endings here, the omicron ending. Okay, so make sure, again, I like flashcards. It's what I've always used. I would write the Greek on one side, full dictionary entry, including the genitive and the definite article, and then put the English translation on the back of the card. Just means man. Okay, but yeah, just copy the Greek as you see it onto your flashcard, and then the English as you see it on the back. And that's my recommendation to you for that. And then Here's some translation hints, okay? So learn all the words given in vocabularies. Learn all forms as they are presented. Okay, we just talked about that. Note the significance of the various forms, okay? So we're talking about nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, singular, plural. And then read the Greek aloud, noting word groups. Okay. So word groups, what they're talking about there is, so ton anthropon, definite article goes with the anthropon. It's accusative. There's no other accusative in that sentence, so that word with its definite articles grouped by itself. You have here a verb. We haven't talked about verbs, so these may not be as obvious yet, so don't stress about that. And then you have the apo is together with the genitive here. And again, we haven't gotten into that very deeply. Don't stress too much about what they're saying, noting word groups. We'll get into that more later. And then translate. And then here is your translation work here. So I'll read the first sentence to you. So tous polemius. Notice they put the iota in there. And then pau usin. Okay. So yeah, read the Greek out loud to yourself and then go ahead and translate it, right? So you have accusative, direct object here. So the enemies, right? The enemies, polemos without the iota there is war, right? Polemius would be the enemies, and then pausin is they stop. So they is the subject of the sentence tucked inside the verb here, third person plural ending. They stop the enemies. Let's see what they say. So we have translation note number 1. Okay. New is usually added to words ending in sigma iota before a word beginning with a vowel or at the end of a sentence. This is called a movable or new movable, right? So when this new here, it just appears when the word is at the end of a sentence. That's all they're saying. I'm trying to think if we have an example of this in English where we don't like the idea of that vowel being on the end, so they're closing it off with a new. But that's all they're saying is the third person plural is usi, but if it's at the end of the sentence, which is often, they're gonna add a new on the end of it, but the ending is still the same, usi. Okay, and you'll see more of that once we get verbs in the next lesson. Go ahead and translate these sentences. I will post the full explanation of these translations on Patreon for our subscribers there. If you're not subscribed to Patreon and you would like to have help with these translation exercises, go over there and subscribe. It's $10 a month. A link is in the description box below this video. And I hope to see you over there. And otherwise, thanks for stopping by today, and thanks for following. Subscribe, like, share with a friend if you feel so inclined, and I appreciate it. All right, thank you. Take care.